live. All right. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is Zero Point Radio here on YouTube, and my guest today is called Matthew Rosewater, and he is what we call a certified completion process practitioner. What that is that it's someone that facilitates an integration process of healing to heal developmental traumas and any of the other traumas that's stored in ourselves. And he studied the practice from a teacher called Till Swan. She also has a YouTube channel, Till Swan. And today we're going to talk about what it is and how we can incorporate that into our lives to heal certain things that we think are unsolvable and that we can get beyond, because a lot of us reach a plateau, even us the spiritual kinds that like to do yoga, meditation. Certain things go deeper than we think, and that's what we're going to explore today with Matthew, thanks for coming in. Thank you for your time.
It's wonderful to be here. Hi everyone.
Hey, and I'm going to start with asking you some basic questions, and let's get started.
Let's do it.
All right.
I'm excited.
Yeah. First question. How did you first find out about the completion process? When did you?
That's a super good question. Yeah. So this is going back a few years. So Teal put out this fantastic video that I pretty much think is like the majority of what the completion process is, but it was before the name of it was coined, essentially. And what that name of that video was how to heal the emotional body. Okay. And what I found by doing that process, which is kind of like the biggest part of the completion process, which entails the being with your emotions and following them and seeing like what comes up in terms of memory. I tried that on myself, and I was blown away by what it could do. And by virtue of me trying this process out, I began to see and become a match to within Teal Tribe, which is this phenomenal Facebook community group. So if you guys follow Teal Swan's work and you're not in Teal Tribe, highly recommend finding it. That other people were talking about this, and then all of a sudden, like, it became known by this name of the completion process. And Teal had taken and handpicked people to train in this process before it was really released to the public. So when these first trainings took place, before it was something that was available to the mainstream to even know about, the completion process book as we know it today was just a manuscript. It had not even been published or anything like that. And from this first group, I can't remember if she was in the first or the second group, but I worked with my first practitioner, and by virtue of coming into the knowledge that this existed, I wanted to see, like, well, who's doing it, you know? So I would notice in this Facebook group that certain people would advertise their services in offering this. And I was like, because there were some moments, actually quite a lot of moments at that point in time where it's like, I can't get past this XYZ part of this process, and I don't know what to do about it. And because you come into this knowledge knowing that you kind of get this empowerment to really go and heal so many different aspects of your life, like this process, and I'm sure we'll talk more about it, but can quite literally be applied to anything that you're struggling with, trying to move through, can't get past, all of the above, essentially, right? So when I came into that knowledge, I'm like, wow, I want to do this, this, and this, and make this change, and look into this and see what's really underneath this. And, you know, like, you just kind of like open the floodgates, essentially, when you get empowered in that way. So I was like, wow, I want to work with somebody. And I had seen some really good testimonials from one particular practitioner. And it's funny because she actually is no longer practicing with anyone, but her name was Sarah Dawn. And I hired her to do a completion process session. And what I learned was, like, working with somebody was a game changer. So I got to actually experience the process for myself as it was facilitated by somebody. And the benefit of that was that you have somebody that can hold that space for you, because this process, if you're not familiar, is going to entail you pretty much going into some really uncomfortable stuff in terms of emotions. And your subconscious mind essentially was developed to keep yourself out of that stuff, right? So you have someone there to help you to hold that space, right? And then to also navigate you and guide you through anything that comes up in the way that tries to keep you out of feeling that.
Yeah.
So someone that can see the bigger picture that maybe you can't because you're so, caught up in your subconscious chess match, that
Yeah.
somebody else can easily see a way around that.
And for so long, you've only seen your life through your own lens. So maybe
Yes.
someone else's perspective will see something you didn't.
Oh
And
yeah.
that
And Teal
little
has this
thing.
like reference with the telescope. Are you familiar?
Yeah, yeah. So how was it again? Instead of seeing through the telescope, now you're seeing yourself looking through the telescope.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
what you do is you zoom
Mhm.
out of that perspective, and so you're actually watching and observing yourself looking
Mhm.
through that telescope. Now you have access to this wider perspective of what's really happening here.
Yeah.
But when
Mhm.
you're in trauma and you're going into painful emotions,
Mhm.
like it's almost cruelty to expect yourself to do that unless you're like
Mhm.
really, really, seasoned in this kind of work.
Yeah.
So to have
Mhm.
somebody, and even like the most seasoned people, I feel will benefit greatly from having somebody work with them,
Absolutely, yes.
because like
Mhm.
they're going to have someone attuned to them where they can offer suggestions also too during the process that maybe we wouldn't have ordinarily thought of to do that could really benefit
Yeah.
us or help us to pass an obstacle that shows up. So
Mhm.
I got to have that experience and it blew my mind, and
Mhm.
it was the best integration up until that point that I've ever had. And then shortly after that, I think within 2 months, I remember specifically, I hired her in the month of April, and then in
Mhm.
2 months after that, I went to Teal's Phoenix, Arizona workshop, which was a whole between
Nice.
that
Mhm.
session and getting to that workshop was already like a turning point in my life, which we'll talk about
Mhm.
because I saw one of the questions has to do with Whole Foods, and that was
Yeah.
in that time period. But
Mhm.
and that probably makes no sense to anybody right now, but we'll get into that. I
Yeah.
promise. Why I
Yeah,
just
it's
mentioned
coming
Whole
up.
Foods, but
Mhm.
essentially, I went to a workshop, my first in-person Teals One workshop, a couple of months later, and
Mhm.
I stayed in what you call a tribe house, which is essentially just we all
Mhm.
rent out a big Airbnb and fill it with as many Teal tribers as possible that are going to the workshop and hang
Ah.
out all together for that weekend. I
Mhm.
had never had an experience like that before,
Mhm.
which taught me that I needed that in my life,
Nice.
first of
Yeah.
all. But the important part about this, in terms of the question here, is that there was actually quite a few completion process trained facilitators staying in that house.
Ah,
Um,
nice. Okay.
and I got to meet them, and there was one, I'm not going to say who it was, but
Mhm.
one who had her own breakdown
Mhm.
during the time that we were staying there, and
Mhm.
it felt so right and natural for me having gone through the process myself, even though I'm not trained. I felt like I was able to
Mhm.
hold that space and potentially facilitate that for her. So I
Wow,
asked her if
that's
that
awesome.
felt good to do,
Mhm.
and we did it, and it was beautiful. And that
Mhm.
just was like my indication that maybe I should try this, maybe I should look into this. So
Mhm.
that was kind
Yeah.
of me really coming into the idea that maybe I could also offer that to people.
Nice. That's
And here we are.
beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. Um, you mentioned something. We talked about something a couple seconds ago about the advantages of having someone like help you with the process instead of doing it yourself all the time.
Yeah.
I had wrote down something that I kind of had an epiphany where I realized that one of the biggest reasons why some people might need someone to facilitate them is because you need a minimum of level of self-love to be able to be present with those parts of yourself that deeply. Because I noticed that a lot of people would be willing to do it themselves, but they'll reach a point where it gets too scary or too intense. And if they needed like 0.03% more self-love to actually commit at that point and still stay with that and not just bail out, that's where having someone would help. So let's say you're someone who starts from scratch where you don't even know what self-care is or self-love. It'd be better to have someone, kind of guide you through the process first, and then you'll be able to, know what to expect when you reach a wall where you're like, okay, this is too much, and I suck anyways. I'm not worthy, and then those start spiraling. Next thing you know, you're not even in the process no more. You're, you're back. You're back in the real world, being triggered again. Yeah.
I'd love to expand on that if that's okay.
Sure. Yeah.
So when I feel into
Mhm.
hearing that, I think it might be a super perfect perspective for you, but I think for a lot of
Mhm.
people that might hear that perspective on like needing a certain level of self-love, then
Mhm.
what they're going to do is they're going to use that to beat themselves up. So what I want to
Yeah,
suggest as an
I can see.
alternative to looking at that is to really look at your intention behind wanting to do it in the first place.
Okay.
So when you're
Okay.
coming into this with the
Mm-hmm.
intention of I just need to fix myself because something's wrong with me,
Mm-hmm.
which there's nothing wrong with feeling that way. If you feel that way, I trust that you feel that way for a good reason. You know, we
Mm-hmm.
always feel what we feel for an accurate and valid reason.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But the thing is, like with this work, what you'll come to knowing as you go through it
Mm-hmm.
over and over and over, and this is
Mm-hmm.
something you don't have to do like initially or have to have this level of self love or whatever it is, because you can go into a process feeling like that and succeed with
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
But the thing is, like over time, your intention for it changes. So it's no longer like, oh
Mm-hmm.
my God, something's wrong with me. I need to fix me. It
Mm-hmm.
turns into the perspective of, oh wow, like I feel that there's pain, there's an unhealed wound that I want to spend time with and be there for. So
Yeah, I
you
love
begin
that.
to look at
Yeah.
it differently.
Mm-hmm.
An analogy I love to use with clients is you take the word pain and
Mm-hmm.
you break it down into PAIN. Pay attention, integrate now.
I love that.
So what that's
Yeah.
basically
Mm.
telling you is like there's something going off in your body that's trying to alert you to something. And
Mm-hmm.
as you go through this process over time, you're going to be changing the meaning behind the experience of you feeling pain. So
Oh, big
instead,
time. Yeah.
yeah, you're
I
going to be
love
wanting
that
to be there for you,
because
for yourself.
now that's when you get to the point where you start seeing like negative events as a blessing because you're like, oh, that's a trigger. Let me use that for healing. Like you said,
Mm-hmm.
pain, pay attention, integrate now.
Yes.
Yeah, so now when a problem arises, instead of going, oh gosh, not this again, you go, oh wait, I can use that now
Yeah.
as a stepping tool, stool, and then I can get on a higher, on a deeper level of healing.
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where we need to differentiate between pain and suffering. So pain
Yeah,
is something that is inevitable that we've come here to have
yeah,
contrasting experiences so that we know what we want to move in the direction of instead, right? You can't know black without white.
yeah,
But suffering is something that we create. So
yeah,
suffering is when you think what's happening is not supposed to be happening.
yeah. Oh man,
When we change the
that's a
meaning
big
of that
one.
experience, then we
Mm-hmm.
just go into the pain knowing there's just an unhealed aspect,
Mm-hmm.
aka a crying inner child. Do you really want to ignore that?
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean? So it
Yeah.
changes the meaning, and to
Mm-hmm.
kind of put like the final piece together of that puzzle of why it can be helpful to have somebody there with you
Mm-hmm.
is that there is certain trauma that I think you need to have somebody there with you for,
Yeah,
especially
yeah.
when it involves abandonment or isolation
Mm-hmm.
specifically, because the
Mm-hmm.
whole trauma is being alone. So having you do
Mm-hmm.
that alone is going to be extremely difficult. Not that I'm saying it
Mm-hmm.
can't be done or it's impossible,
Mm-hmm.
but man, will you be doing yourself such a service to have somebody be there with you
Yeah,
and prove to you that they're not going to leave you until you find that resolution.
yeah.
So there's so many benefits to having
Oh
somebody
yeah.
there with you.
Oh yeah. I remember when I was at Philia, um, I was part of the first group there at Teal Swans Retreat, Philia in Costa Rica,
Mm-hmm.
and I remember telling the group that part of the reasons why we need to be together and do certain things together is because human beings, in the way I see it, is like we're kind of like diamonds in the sense that only a diamond can actually carve another diamond because it's the strongest material on the planet. So you can't use it like a piece of metal or anything else. It has to be pieces of diamond to carve a diamond. So we kind of need each other to heal each other. And like you
Mm-hmm.
said, if you have abandonment issues, if you have issues having a relationship, well, you need someone to have a relationship with to be able to heal that. Even if it's in the realm of your meditation, you have to picture some sort of support figure to assist you with your healing. Yeah.
That's something a lot of people in the spiritual community don't realize is that connection is a basic human need for survival.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And that everyone's really going around touting that whole, oh, you just have to go within. All the answers
Yeah.
are within you. You only need yourself. But what that's doing is
Mm-hmm.
it's promoting isolation.
Yeah, and it's another form of like defense mechanism and personality takeover. Where I'm 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 good without I'm good without this or that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Another question here is that what techniques of your own did you develop that are not particularly in the book?
Ooh, that's a good
Yeah.
question.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I think, and I get this question a lot, especially when I'm having like discovery calls with clients that I haven't worked with yet. And maybe they've either tried this process either on their own with other facilitators, but haven't quite gotten very far. And the most common question that I get, even just yesterday, is what do I do if there's no memory that comes up, right? That's the big burning question in this community. And I'm here to tell you that that is not always needing to be the case. To preface this, every experience that you have with this process or this type of work in general is always going to be the most perfect one for you in that moment. It's always a valid experience and the right one for you. But the thing is that we tend to get so hung up on like doing things right and having to follow the process to a T that sometimes our expectations of how it's supposed to look or how it's supposed to go actually prevent us from moving forward through the process.
Yeah. That's why
So
sometimes,
what I do,
I tell people not to base their healing with someone else's healing that they saw on YouTube or somewhere, you know, because it might be completely different for you.
So here's the thing: it's like we're given these guidelines of the completion process, an 18-step process. But the thing is, not always are you going to follow every step of the process or every step exactly how it's written. So what I've done to help clients really get past that hurdle, because it is a big hurdle for a lot of us, especially if we don't have that level of self-trust for the parts of you that are in pain even feel comfortable revealing themselves to you in that way. Is what you do is you find alternative ways to access those parts of you or those inner children. So I feel super equipped, and it's very rare that I'll ask the question, when was the very first time that you felt the same feeling anymore?
Yeah. Okay. Third question. How do you think individual healing at that level affects the collective as a whole? Like people around you, your family, friends.
Okay. Yeah, no, it's huge. So, oh my gosh. So this, I feel like this can probably be its own entire 2-hour segment, but to try to break that down, essentially, we live in a law of attraction-based universe. So what's happening is when you improve your point of attraction by virtue of integrating, you're going to change what is around you. So whether that is going to be making you imagine new people, places, and things, or also causing the other people to shift around you in order to maintain that connection with you. It's going to help kind of, quote unquote, light the fire under everyone around you to also look into their healing. Right? But the thing is, too, is like you can't end the suffering of the planet until you end it within yourself. So you can kind of think as like the collective suffering of humanity is a pie. Think of this like suffering pie, right? And each person, each human represents a slice of it. If one person eats away all of their pain and suffering, there's less of it in the collective pie.
Very well put.
So it starts with the individual, and the people that are doing that won't be able to hold space for so many other people that haven't yet.
And for the audience that's not too familiar with what happens when you heal with the completion process or any sort of like integration healing of any kind, is that parts of you that were traumatized stay at that age. So let's say you had a trauma like in the wound or when you were 5 years old, it kind of just stays there. So when you heal and you integrate that to your main, everyday self, you become more whole. You add more of yourself to your main, consciousness. So that triggers things that were you couldn't be able to manifest before to finally come forward, which is pretty freaking awesome, especially for people who've been struggling with poverty consciousness for a while. People that have been manifesting, the wrong relationships for a while that are abusive or neglecting. So a lot of people I've seen that after they do that healing, they finally meet that person, that can love them and they can love back. And mutually, they finally, manifest that job that they wanted or that money that they needed, So I think it's amazing.
It is amazing. All right.
Okay. That's a good one. What was your biggest shadow to heal after you quit your job at Whole Foods? I don't know if you want to give like a bit of a background before you answer that.
Totally. So here's the thing. When you begin to make this type of practice a regular thing in your life, you become so much more attuned to the way that you feel all throughout the day. So
Yeah.
when you kind of redevelop your feelings, essentially you begin to feel them willingly, and they become stronger and more noticeable when things happen to you in reality, right? You can't help but feel them. You can't ignore them anymore. So for me, what that looked like was working a job that I couldn't stand being at. And because I was becoming so much more in tune and in touch with my emotions and my feelings, I really like tuned into how shitty I felt while I was there.
Yeah. I think you and
So,
99% of the world right now are feeling that, 9 to 5
oh
jobs,
yeah,
something you're not passionate about.
yeah. Oh my gosh, yeah. It was just like literally draining the life out of me to the point where whenever I had a day off, like I had to spend it recovering, and I couldn't do anything. I couldn't connect with anybody. Like it was just like this never ending vicious cycle, right? So it occurred to me that like either I need to make a change, or like I want nothing to do with living.
Yeah, it really does get to that.
Yep, that's what it felt like.
And I think
So
I think sorry to interrupt you there for a little bit, but you touched on something that I think that's super super important, and I'm glad you explained it that like that. Is that so much of yourself is like dying, like you said, that you don't have energy to even like be sociable with your friends, and you don't and you really get to the point where either you do something about it, or you don't want to, you don't see the point of living anymore, because it's killing you inside to just do those things over and over and working in a place that you don't love. And when I look through like memes now, I don't know if you've noticed this, but there's a lot of memes, even though most of them are funny, but they're like suicidal theme memes. Like, oh, I want to, drink, detergent or Tide Pods, like eat that, or I want to end this, and they would kind of add like a funny picture with it. But it started to dawn on me how much those memes are popular, that there might be an underlying very serious truth to all those, Facebook and
it's a cry
Instagram
for
memes.
help.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. So, yeah, a lot of people are in that frame of mind right now with that low energy of being, drained. But go on, yeah.
Yeah, so man, this is like another thing. I'm like, I can talk to you for 2 hours about this,
Yeah.
but I quit. I did quit that job. It came down to the point of literally like, this is it. Like, there's no choice here, because I care too much about how I feel. So I made that decision, and I had no idea what I was going to do. I had no plan. I had no money cushion. I just knew that like I can't be here. That's all I knew. So I did that. Like a week afterwards, still like having no idea what's going on with my life at all. But I noticed that the next month after. So this is in the middle of me working with a facilitator and going to that workshop I mentioned. So this is like May.
Yeah.
So I'll kind of give that time frame before. So what happened was I became aware that there was a workshop coming up the next month, but like it didn't feel right or aligned financially for me to do that. But I just knew I needed to go there because like Teal maybe can help me, provide some new perspectives or shine some light on like what happens next, So I just held that in my mind, but I was kind of light and easy about it. I wasn't like desperately attached to it, but just kind of like that would be so cool to have that experience, And the craziest thing happened. So, okay, one of my mutual friends, Jenna Lemire, you guys might know her in the CP community as well, had a friend that reached out to me through Teal Tribe. This person I had never met. Jenna hadn't even like had nothing to do with this, right? But it was just someone that she knew. So that's how like he became aware of who I was, right?
Okay.
Reached out to me and out of nowhere decided that he wanted to make sure that I went to this workshop, and he paid for my flight there. He paid for my workshop ticket, and he paid for me staying in that tribe house that I was in.
Amazing! Wow, I did not know
So
that.
like,
that's
that
awesome.
To this day, I don't even know if it has fully sunk in. Like, this is somebody I've never talked to in my entire life that told me this, So to kind of keep it short, I ended up going. And I went to the workshop, and I was the first person called on stage to go have a question answered.
Nice. I actually saw that video before I quit my job, and it inspired me a lot. Very much so.
Beautiful.
And I'm
I
actually
became that infamous person in this Teal Tribe community that like the one that quit their job, So it's been really fun. I get a lot of people that come to me with that, and if any of you viewers want to see that,
I'm gonna put a
I can
link in the description
help out with
below.
that.
Yeah,
Yeah, you can also
yeah,
just go to YouTube, just search for Planet Ascension. That's my YouTube channel. You'll
yeah.
find it on there.
Hmm.
Um, but she helped me to realize a lot of things. And your question here, why we're leading up to that, is because what was your biggest shadow to heal after you quit? Well, she made me aware of what I was doing that I didn't know I was aware that I was doing. So what she helped me to understand was that there are more than one aspect of me that lives within me. There are parts of me. Where one part of you can feel one way and another part feels another way. And what I was doing is trying to take action steps that most of me was not on board with.
Yeah.
So what she helped me to understand was like I was bulldozing over the aspects of me that didn't want to do what I was doing, or just needed me to like pay attention to them and offer them presence while I did those things. So I had no idea that was even an option before. And of course, like nowadays, like in the present moment, 2015, like parts work is like this massive thing that Teal's doing and promoting and practicing in all our workshops these days. So it's more well known now.
Yeah.
But to me, I had never heard anyone talk about that ever. And that completely changed everything for me. So what I was able to do was to work with myself. And also a bigger thing that I had to like really work on was accepting my situation, because I was so attached to what I preferred it to be or what I was looking at manifesting. But I was in complete denial of where I was. So I think that was probably another big turning point as well. And there are many layers to that I found after, but that was the initial step that kind of got me on this path. And when was that? Two years? It'll be 2 years this May, I think. Man, never worked another job like that ever again.
Nice, I love that.
And here I am today. I'm alive. And I'm doing quite well.
and you have food, you have a roof over your head. You're.
Oh my God!
Yeah,
so much. It's crazy.
That's awesome. And I'm proud of you for doing that. That's amazing to me. That's awesome, because a lot of us, especially like people in their 20s now, they're just like after being out of high school and into college, we're kind of just expected to just have it all figured out. And a lot of us have anxieties that never healed, that never like got dealt with. So now you have people that are adults now, they're in their 20s like us, that have these random blockages where I can't seem to get myself out of bed to do these simple tasks. So this is one way to, like you said, approach those aspects of yourself and nurture them instead of bulldozing over to take affirmative actions on things that not all parts of you agree with yet.
Yeah, you can ask them. You can literally open up a dialogue with them. Literally. I also didn't know.
Like talk to the parts of you that's afraid to go to a job interview because it doesn't believe you're good enough to get the job. Talk to that part. Yeah. And you'd be surprised if you stay with it, you'll get like a reply, kind of like a conversation like we're having right now. Yeah.
And a lot of people don't realize like that's shadow work too.
Yeah, it is.
That's a common term thrown around this community. What the hell is shadow work? Anything that is shadow work is you finding out something that was in the subconscious that you didn't know before.
Perfect.
That's shadow work.
Exactly. Yeah.
And man, it's a powerful stuff. I can tell you.
Oh yeah. All right. Next question. How do you approach clients who know nothing about shadow work? Like, let's say you have someone freaking out, they have a trigger, and they want your assistance. Like, how do you explain to them what shadow work is?
Yeah, totally. So I have all different kinds of clients find me from all over the world. That's the beauty of being able to work through a venue like Skype, for example, is that you can work with anybody anywhere. So my website, if they found me through what I offer, I do have a video that really explains how this process works and what this work looks like at a very detailed level. So people can always watch that first, and people kind of do before they set something up with me. But what I get the most common is people from Instagram that find me, because Instagram doesn't have all that information readily available. But they realize that I do that kind of work, right? So by some of the things that I post or what some of my bio has to say about me. So they'll reach out and be like, well, I'm dealing with this. Do you think like what you do helps with that? And they have no idea who Teal is. They have no idea what emotions are. They have no idea what the completion process is. And I've taken a good deal of clients like that. And let me tell you, those are my favorite.
Oh, really?
Because they have no expectations of how it's supposed to look or how it's supposed to go. So that doesn't get in their way of their process. So when they're led through this process, they are like letting themselves go so deep because they're not caught up in like, well, what about the memory? What about step 8? What about blah, blah, blah?
Yeah.
So they like go right there. And it's like the most profound, and the best part is seeing their reaction afterwards, and they didn't know that that was what was going to happen.
That is
so
beautiful. Yeah.
I think anyone can benefit from it, and I even find it to be a benefit to not know anything about it because you can go deeper.
Nice. And what was the name of your website again? Ascension.com?
Planetascension.com.
Oh, Planet. Yeah, planetascension.com. I'm gonna post it up in the links below, and I'm also gonna put it somewhere in the video for sure. Because I think there's a quote that's been, I don't know if you've seen it go around, but it's like a picture of a Zen master, and it says, "The world does not need more successful people. It needs more healers, lovers, and supporters," or something like that. And I think people like you who do this as a profession are giving so much to the world that is so needed right now. Because in my mind, you know, when there's like an emergency alert and it's like code red, and everyone has to be, you know, ready for, you know, to take action and help and assist in a accident or disaster. I think we've been in code red in this quote unquote emotional, you know, dark age where we don't know what to do with our emotions.
Have we ever?
Like, we're literally on code red, you know, but nobody knows we're on code red. You know, this is high alert.
That's the scariest part. Yeah.
So, you know, they you know, consume substances to kind of like numb themselves out and just go to work, you know, drink your coffee, you know, party on weekends and just kind of go through it. But you really need to heal, you know, and move forward, not just for yourself, but I noticed that when you heal someone, you that someone is not just one person. That someone is someone's sister, and that someone is someone's mother and someone's cousin and neighbor. So healing one person, you're actually allowing that person that's healed to even help other people or create better space for, you know, whoever they interact with. So it has kind of like a ripple effect that's huge in my opinion.
100%.
Yeah.
I completely agree.
Okay. Next question. My sister has suggested me to use crystals when I do my completion processes, which I hadn't thought about before until she mentioned it. And I started using them in my completion process as like an aid, like an assistance to the vibration that I'm seeking, whether it's love, assurance, groundedness. And do you use crystals in your completion process or any, you know, added paraphernalia or anything like that?
All the time.
Nice. Okay.
So, do you want to meet one of them?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
This comes in to me, not always, but like most times, this is the one that wants to come in while I facilitate sessions for people. This is the stone called Wavelite. And what I found is that this is the ultimate like inner child journeying stone that really holds that space for you to access those vulnerable parts of yourself. But it also assists me to like feel even more attuned to my client to know what they might need in each moment. So whenever I feel unclear, I check in with this crystal and receive intuitive hits and answers as to where I should go next. So I think it's highly helpful. I mean, not everyone's going to resonate or need to do that, but for me, it's amazing. And then I also, have you heard of Tools for Evolution before?
No, I have not.
So not only do I do sessions online like we talked about, but I also offer them in person. I live in Portland, Oregon in the USA, and I work out of a healing space that is a crystal store. And they have turned me on to these. Oh my God. So I have a few that I put on that I picked up for the day. These are Tools for Evolution. I'm not really sure how well you can see this, but basically each of these pendants, right? They're all cut into sacred geometry. And there was someone that really started this whole movement. His name was Marcel Vogel. He was actually really well known for working with IBM to develop the LCD screen liquid crystal display. He measured frequencies and like the potential of stones. And he also worked with Dr. Emoto, who did the water experiments in terms of like saying positive things to your water and negative things or ignoring the water and like what that did to the structure. And then he also learned that implementing crystals in the water also changed the structure.
Nice.
And what he
Okay.
was most well known for was precisely cutting crystals into sacred geometry and watching how it shifted their frequency that they emitted. So it becomes
Nice.
more strengthened and more consistent and amplified in terms of the characteristics that the stones can offer you.
That's
So
amazing.
I highly love
Yeah.
these and believe in these so much, and I feel like these hold so much space along with me. So it's like the client is having like the space of like an army there with them, like they're really getting
Nice.
this presence, right? And
Nice.
also I can set intentions with these stones. That's the beautiful part about crystals. It's like you don't
Mm-hmm.
have to be doing all this stuff on your own. You can actually ask for help.
Yeah.
So I bring this stuff in as like an extra support system, or sometimes if I need some guidance while I'm in a process, like I'm not perfect, so I'll check with crystals, like, hey, what do you guys think right now would be the best to do in this moment if I'm unclear? And I usually always get something. I've never not had a session complete.
Yeah.
So it's really cool to implement them if that feels like something you're into. And
Yeah.
I highly suggest it if anyone feels the pull to give it a try, no matter what it is you're doing or what you're doing in your life. Honestly, I think they are such a huge bonus,
Yeah,
if
they're a
anything, but
bonus.
definitely a bonus, not necessary. So it's
Yeah.
important to know that distinction.
Yeah. And remind us again the name of the green crystal you just showed us.
Yeah, this is called Wave of Light.
Wave of Light. Okay, nice. Awesome.
It's my personal favorite, and I've tried a lot. So this one is just my like go-to.
Because inner child is super, super crucial, like
Yes.
aspect of the human collective, because that's the one that's the part of it that's most wounded. Yeah. All right. Next question. Let's see here. Okay. Do you think you could use nightmare terrors as triggers to initiate a completion process?
Sure.
Yeah.
So completion process is really going to be based off of emotions, right? So like tapping into, well, how did that nightmare cause you to feel? How has that affected you in a negative way? And then use that as your entry point through which you use the process to figure out what's underneath it.
I love that. You know what I like about that a lot? And that's, to me, that's beautiful because now people won't have to be afraid of nightmares because they're like, well, if I do have one, I can use that now for healing.
Yeah. Perfectly said. And you can also assist with crystals in that way too.
Yeah.
That's another way you can use your stones. There are certain stones that are really well known for that, like Septarian. Is probably my favorite for night terrors specifically.
I love that. Okay. Let me see. What other question? What's the next one? Okay. How many people have you facilitated so far? And what is the biggest common hurdle you find that people have to deal with before they reach a breakthrough in their healing?
Oh boy, how many people have I worked with? I don't even know. So I have clients that'll just come to me for like one-off sessions here and there. I have sessions that I work with on a weekly basis. But in terms of like individual unique clients, God, I don't even know how to. I'm just gonna throw out a random guess because I literally have no idea. Maybe between 40 to 60.
Okay, nice.
I have no idea. I literally don't even know. It's like a crazy thing to think of. I could probably look up statistics through my scheduling program, but I have no clue.
Sure,
but I guess in terms of what was it, their biggest hurdle to having a breakthrough?
Like the obstacle you're seeing people in general is the hardest for them when you do the facilitation for them.
I guess I would probably go with something we mentioned and touched on a little bit earlier is if they really don't think that there's going to be a memory that comes up or their expectation is this isn't going to work or do anything. So I think like what you believe is one of the most powerful things that exist, right? Your reality is a summation of your beliefs manifested. So I think it really comes down into like what your intentions are and what you expect to get from the session, because also some people come into these things thinking that people like me are here to magically fix them. But the thing is, this is your journey and I'm just here to guide you through it. So Teal calls us emotional midwives, where this is a process that's going to take place, but we're just here to make sure it's the best way possible for you. We're going to guide you through the journey in the best way that we can for you, for your best benefit. So it's not me fixing anyone, it's just me offering my presence and support to help guide them. And then if you come into it with, with the intention of like, oh, this person's going to fix me, I need to depend on this person, and like have skewed intentions in terms of like what this is supposed to look like in terms of a collaboration or co-creation, I think that can sometimes prevent people from really moving through the experience and really getting those benefits they're looking for.
Very well put. Yeah, I like that. Because I facilitated about, I think, 4 people personally, even though I don't do it professionally, just friends of mine that needed it. And
Mhm.
yeah, like I all that is very, very true. Even with the small, I didn't do, 40, 50, or 60 people, but even with the small amount of people I did, I noticed that pattern among all of them. Yeah.
Yes.
hmm So I love that term, emotional midwife, because you're like giving birth to your new self, pretty much, in a sense, and you're
Yes.
just there
It's
to
like the Phoenix
assist.
concept.
Yeah, you're just there to assist that birthing process, but you're not the one giving birth. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, makes sense. I love that.
Mm.
Okay. All right. I like to view the completion process as a sort of spiritual open heart surgery, which is, very serious and can last hours. And would you agree with that metaphor?
In some ways, yes. Some ways, no.
Sure.
Um, so in the ways that yes, like it is a serious thing for sure because your body's really trying to alert you with pain, using it as a red flag to point you in the direction of like what needs healing, right? So that's a really important part of it. And yeah, it can take that long. That's a good question too that I get is like, well, how long is the session? They're very different. I
Yeah.
have some that are 45 minutes and some that are 2 hours.
Yeah.
So it really can change depending on like what you're going into. However, the open heart surgery concept like makes it feel like something needs to be removed or something went bad within you, which isn't actually the case. So what we're doing with integration is we're actually going back and we're becoming one again with ourselves. So there's nothing in us that needs to be like cut open and taken out. It's all about the coming back together. It's not about taking anything away. So it's really about bringing yourself back into wholeness through this process.
Okay, nice. Yeah. With people I've explained the process, the completion process too, I've used the metaphor of an open heart surgery, not so much with the idea of like there's something that needs to be cut open and be taken out of, but just in a way to kind of like let them know how important and serious it is, because I noticed that in general people don't take spiritual healing as serious as medical physical practice at a hospital. And I've noticed also that even Teal Swan had mentioned this, that when you're doing a completion process and you're going to those really, really deep wounded aspects of your subconscious, it's like having an open wound where the person is extremely vulnerable. Some people, cry and break down. Some people, even purge sometimes. You could throw up or anything can come up, kind of like a psychedelic sort of, experience almost in that
Oh yeah,
sense.
I agree with you on that.
Yeah, so it's kind of like having a very serious procedure in a sense where you can't just go into thinking you're going to do a completion process right before going, clocking in at Starbucks. I'll just, do it really quick before I go to work. No, you also need time.
I actually want to challenge that.
Really? Okay. Because I
Yes.
find that I usually like need time after that to kind of like solidify myself again after a completion process and digest what had just happened.
So that's us painting a picture of how it's supposed to look, and it doesn't always look that way.
Okay.
So where this kind of shifted for me, and I held that perspective before, by the way, so you're not alone in that. But what changed that for me was my CP training. And Teal's right-hand person, I'm not going to say who it is because I don't know if she wants me to, but somebody that's there with Teal during the training told us that after one of the days that we all had our time together and learned from her for like, I don't know, 8 hours or whatever, told us afterwards, I did CP 6 times, was sitting here, and we had no idea.
Okay.
So you can actually be doing CP and not have this like wild breakdown for an hour and a half. You can actually be sitting there silently, not even having like any difference in the way that your movement is, or no one would even know the difference if they were sitting around you, and you can still go inward.
Okay, nice. I love that. Especially in our modern world, we no longer live, forest environments in a tribe where you could just have time to just stand by the river we have to go to work, pay bills, so that's great.
That's the deal. So you have to prioritize
Yeah.
where that lies for you.
Okay.
But to know that it can be the way that you describe, like that's not, I'm not saying that that's wrong. Like that's one potential, but there are other potentials too. And I actually learned that myself on the way home from CP training. On my flight home, I did CP 3 times, sitting where I was with people on both sides of me, and they would have had no idea.
Okay, nice.
And I got off the flight just fine and did what I had to do. So I still continued about my day or go to Starbucks or whatever. But there might be times where that's not the case. So I just invite you to really feel into where you're at.
Of course.
And then act accordingly to that.
Yeah. And also there's different levels of pain, You might not have so much of a, wound about manifesting food, but you could have a really, really deep wound about, abandonment. That might be more, a more serious thing to dive into. Okay.
Yeah, and it really comes down to like we talked about it already, but the expectation. So if all of us hold the idea that this is how it's supposed to look and it doesn't go that way, you're gonna think you did it wrong or something's wrong with you for not having that reaction, right? So that's why, like we mentioned, the people that have no idea what it is have such deep and powerful and profound results because they don't know about that. They don't know it's supposed to look a certain way.
And that's why.
So it's really about like reevaluating what that looks like for us, and maybe potentially like removing ourselves from that expectation or idea altogether, and just letting it organically flow each time uniquely.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the biggest reasons why kids are the best at it.
Yeah.
Yeah, kids just go with
it'll be the fastest sessions you ever do.
Yeah, it'll be the fastest, most, and of course they've had, shorter time here than, adults, obviously. So they don't have as much layers because we're kind of like fossils, like the longer it's been, there's more layers you have to dig through to find the fossil. Yeah. All right. So let's see. What's the other question after this? Is okay. What are some great manifestation stories you've seen or experienced yourself or your clients after a facilitation?
I have so many. Oh my God, where do I even start? Yeah. What feels better for you intuitively for your viewers? Do you think they want to hear one from me or from one of my clients, or both?
I think both, but more from your clients because they want to hear what people that are not really deep into this field can manifest without having to become like super knowledgeable or a guru or anything like that.
Oh yeah, you got me excited. This is my favorite part ever. Like whenever I get these results coming in, when they always do, it lights you up like nothing else, right? Nice. So I'm going to talk about probably the most recent profound example is actually with a client of mine who now you can actually witness this testimonial on my YouTube channel or on my Facebook if you follow me there.
Okay.
I had a client that was willing to become open and public about what we accomplished together. Okay. And what that was the fear of rejection and not being able to allow herself to have a romantic relationship because of that. And that was extremely painful for her. She wasn't allowing herself to feel seen or to receive love and support in any capacity. So we used that pain, that negative experience to essentially go into a process. And what we learned was this child aspect of her felt like she was being drowned and chased by like how much pain she was in, but she wasn't actually like in it. She didn't have anyone to offer that like safe support or containment for those emotions to be felt and expressed. We were able to provide that to her by bringing in like quite literally an army of support safe figures for her to hold and embrace her through that experience so that her child self could feel what happened to her in her childhood, which was the lack thereof of this support and love and containment. So we offered that to her, and we learned that like all she really needed as a kid was someone just to see how much pain she was in and to give her a freaking hug. Wow. That's all she needed. Yeah. So by virtue of healing that developmental trauma and giving her and meeting her needs like what she didn't get before, she came out of that experience a completely changed person. Within minutes after that session, I didn't know what to expect, but like I felt inspired to act upon something. And I was like, hey, do you want to do a live video with me right now, be seen and share this story? And she just was like, sure. and I know she wanted to do it too. Like I made sure at first I didn't want to make her feel like she didn't want to do anything that she didn't want to do, but we ended up doing it. And she was able to actually see all the support from all the live viewers and the recording viewers that showed her so much love. So she got to see the benefit of that integration of letting herself be seen and be vulnerable, that she wasn't rejected,
Uh-huh.
she wasn't
Oh,
abandoned.
God, that is so
She
beautiful.
received this outpouring of love that was just like
Yeah.
nothing else. In fact, she like broke down again during that live video because of how
Nice.
much love she was getting, and she made that connection as to like what now shifted in her life and what she's now a match to.
Because I noticed that's the number one. I love that. I noticed that's the number one reason why people are afraid to like be vulnerable and show themselves because they fear that rejection.
Mm-hmm.
Even I, had to heal that aspect of myself because I think we all have that. Where, oh man, if I cry, I'll be looked as a certain way, or as weak, or as an issue of any kind. And you pointed out something very important, is that by getting that validation from the live feed, complete strangers or people that don't know her personally gave her that validation. And what I love about that moment, it's a very touching moment, but on a deeper level, even her subconscious now is no longer allowed to say, hey, strangers don't approve of this. No, now she knows for a fact now that's not
She
true.
has the proof.
Yeah, it's concrete proof. Because a lot
And
of.
here's something that I feel called to share too, if that's cool,
Sure.
is that we're not born with these fears. We're not born thinking these things.
No.
Something showed us that was the case for us. So we have to understand that, like, when we're feeling this now, it's because we've learned it somewhere else before. So we're not like, nothing's wrong with us. We actually like quite literally learn that this is the case.
Yeah.
So when we approach it from that way, we can really look into these parts of us a little bit more compassionately and understand like what's really going on here, and know that you have the empowerment to do something with it like we did.
Yeah, exactly. Hence the term developmental trauma. It's you were
Yeah.
developing as a person, as a being, and that trauma, came in between that development and added those ideas in our minds. There was a person, a friend of mine, that I was facilitating, and we noticed at the end, near the end of the completion process, that literally 99% of her traumas and her thoughts about herself, like her opinions about herself, weren't even her thoughts. They were thoughts of the people around her when she was a kid, when she was just a little girl, that they were saying to her, you're not good enough, you're too emotional, you're too sensitive, you're too loud, you should be, always, calm and never express, anger, suppress that. And that didn't even come from her at all.
Yeah, that's the result of like not having emotional validation and also getting no positive mirroring.
Yeah.
If you don't have people around you to give you feedback like that, you don't know who you are, right?
No.
So that's something that we don't realize. Like with parenting, is that like you need to be giving your child positive mirroring so that they know who they are to build their self-concept. If all they're hearing is that BS that you mentioned, then they're going to take that on as who they are and what their identity is, and they're going to hold on to those attachments like magnets to a refrigerator. It's who I am.
And me as the facilitator, being the midwife of that process, I was just observing how those thoughts are kind of like, imagine like you recorded your parents' voice or whoever was there at the time, and then you just like click that on repeat, and now it's part of your mind, and you think those are your thoughts, and they're not. And that was a beautiful realization for her at that moment. Even for me, I was just like, wow, like, what else do we think every day that's not even, something we came
it
up
opens
with?
up a whole new can of worms,
Oh
right?
yeah, oh yeah. But for the better.
Yes.
Okay. Oh, we kind of answered that already. That question. How do you describe completion process to people that don't know? Hidden trauma. Um, okay. Let me see. How long do we have here? Oh wow, we've done an hour.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
This is going to help a lot of people. I'm really excited about this. So thank you again for offering this to the world.
And thank you for being here and sharing your stories. This is very important on so many levels to me, and I don't know how people are gonna receive this video or not. And I hope it helps as many people seeing it as possible, because watching your workshop video, while I was still working at the job that I hated, helped me in my decision to quit. Even though I had no idea what I was gonna do next or what other job I was gonna have, because we still have bills, and we need food and survive and all that kind of stuff. But I want to show people not only your story but other people's stories, so that they don't have to have it as intense as maybe you had it when you quit your job or when I did. Because after I quit my job, I had to learn a lot more stuff about being in that space where I'm free now. I'm no longer tied to a 9 to 5, but now I'm the sole responsible for all aspects of everything now. My time, how I provide for myself, and we need more information as we get better. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Let me see. I had a couple notes here that I want to touch on with you. And let's see. Oh, this is a good one. Okay, I had an epiphany recently after doing a completion process this week actually. And I realized that when you have a certain wound or shadow that gets triggered, you become only a match to the parts of you that hurt. How do I explain this more clearly? For example, let's say I'll take the example of one of the memories I had to deal with. So I'm just going to put out one of my memories, childhood memories. Is that when I was a kid, I was in kindergarten, so I was about what, like 4 or 5 years old, and every kid in class was given, in my class, like were given like toys, but I was the only one left out without one in that group. And I felt so, left out and hurt and diminished. Like my self worth was really low. And now as an adult, I see now that it was just, because they ran out of toys. It wasn't particularly that they hated me or they thought I was worthless. But I didn't know that at the time, and I couldn't have known that until the completion process or doing any sort of integration shadow work, because when you're wounded and you're triggered, you're only a match to information that is the hurt, that is the trigger. Like you don't see the bigger picture yet. And by healing, I was able to see the broader picture where I don't take it as personal at all, because I see that even the person that gave out the last toy, they didn't do it with the intent like, oh, you know what, screw that kid, I'm gonna give it to that person instead, because we didn't even know each other, so there was no sort of like direct affront, to hurt somebody. But I was only a match to even realizing what I just told you out loud by doing the healing. So I think it is very important for people to understand that the world is not as dark as we picture it. There's a lot of good and love and light in the world. And when you're triggered and you're traumatized, even though you don't see the beauty yet, trust me, it's there. And when you do that sort of healing, you finally get to open your eyes and see that, oh, wow, like that was there the whole time for me. I had this person that could have supported me, and they're still there even today. And you have just that immense like relief, and that sense of doom, that dread is just naturally just evaporates. And you could even cry in that moment or feel completely overjoyed. It was like, wow, like I'm glad I was wrong. That the world isn't this horrible, harsh, non-feeling, world. There's a lot of positive things out there. Yeah.
It's true.
Mm-hmm. All right. Do you have any last message for people who seek healing that can't seem to see the light at the end of the tunnel or anything like that?
Yeah, absolutely. There's nothing that hasn't come to me that we haven't found resolution for. I feel like this type of work can literally be used for anything that you're going through. So if you have any questions about that, you can always reach out to me. My website, like we mentioned before, planetascension.com. You can find all of my contact information on there. There's also a newsletter that you can join on that website as well if you want to stay updated with what I'm doing. And if it feels okay, I can kind of mention some things that are upcoming, if that feels good.
Absolutely.
So, this March, March 11th, I'm going to be holding an online webinar with my colleague, Jenna Lemire. And it's going to be on how to feel. Which we mentioned before, we're in the emotional dark age, right? So it's all about learning how to begin to feel emotions, what to do with them, why they're important. We're going to touch on validation as well. And this is something that is for everyone, not just, spiritual people, woo-woo people, teal tribers. This is for anybody because we're all humans and we all have emotions, right? So it's about really getting back into tune with them, back in touch with them, knowing why we have them, what to do when they come up, and how to navigate life with your emotions. So we're going to be having that online workshop on March 11th. And also, I do law of attraction coaching and manifestation because coming from that space of quitting my job and having nothing, I got to learn what worked and what didn't. And to get to where I am today, I had to kind of develop some type of system that worked for me. And I feel like I finally figured out what that is. And so because of that, I developed an online course on how to learn how to do so. So that's also on my website. It's called Waves of Wealth. It's an 8-week online program that anybody around the world can join. I'm with my first group right now, and we're almost on 7 weeks already. We're almost finished with the first program.
Nice.
And I'm going to be doing another run of it very soon. So that's going to be announced probably in the next day or two, to be very honest. The doors are going to open yet again.
Okay.
And then I think people can join up until the end of March, and we'll start another round of that. So if that feels good for anybody, I'd love to have you there.
Okay, great. So there you have it. Go on planetascension.com. I'll post the link, and I might put it on the screen somewhere too, as that you can click on. And yeah, I love the name too, Waves of Wealth. Yeah, that's a good one.
So fun.
Who doesn't want
it's
that?
Such good stuff.
Who doesn't want that?
Yeah, totally. And you can have it.
Yeah,
Trust me.
and you can have it. That's the beauty of it. Yeah, and I love that knowledge of whether you know it or not, you can have it. So even if you don't believe in it yet, trust me, you can. It's there for you.
Let me tell you this: you can't desire something that's not meant to be yours.
Yeah, I love that. Well, thank you, Matthew. Thank you for your time, and this is great.
Thanks for having me.
You're welcome, and yeah, I hope you can also subscribe to our channel, the one I'm doing, but I'll call it 0 Point Radio. And I hope to do more interviews like this because this is something I think is very important, healing. That's what the world needs right now more than anything because with healing comes everything else. Peace.
And even just the awareness that they have the ability to.
Exactly. And we can all heal each other because a lot of times healing happens faster when you have people there with you. And if we can be there for each other, especially with the technology we have now, let's abuse that. Skype, internet, FaceTime, let's use that. We're more connected now than ever before in human history, ever. Yeah.
It's okay to meet people.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks again, Matthew, and talk to you soon. Yeah.
Bye, guys.
Okay, this is where I'm going to end the recording.
Yeah.
Okay.
My gosh, that was so good.